Hello, welcome to Florida Capital T. My name is Anna Marie, and I'm sitting here with City Commission candidate Dot Inman-Johnson. And what seat are you running for?
Seat 5.
Seat 5. All right, so first of all, our team would really like to hear about your extensive resume, because last cycle that you ran, you came with this extensive resume of what you've done in our city. You've already served in our city, so could you just kind of give us some of that history of you?
Well, it's hard for people to understand my resume without understanding where I come from. My husband and I grew up in an era, were born into and grew up in an era when black folk were in a segregated society. He grew up in Georgia, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and grew up where my parents never had the opportunity to vote until I was in college. And I was the 5th child of 14 children born to my parents, who were a domestic housekeeper. My mother liked the movie The Help, and my dad was a coal miner. And we lived most of my early childhood in a 3-room shotgun house under the steel mill because my parents couldn't afford to rent any place else. And even though we were in segregated schools, we had wonderful teachers who really cared about us and really tried to expose us to as much as possible. And they became my heroes. And that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. And so my first professional career was as a teacher. I was a teacher for 28 years. And
where did you teach at? Was it here in Leon County, or?
23 of those 28 years were in Leon County schools and Florida High. Not the last 19 were in Florida High. And I love it when I run into my former students in elementary school. I was an art teacher. And they come up to me to hug me and want to know if I remember them. And they were bitty kids when I saw them, and they're all grown up and professionals now. But it is always so wonderful when I see them and know what they made of their lives.
And that you had a part in shaping that.
Yes.
I mean, with being a teacher, being an art teacher especially, those are the classes I remember the most, because you actually got to do like the hands-on creating,
And it makes me feel that I did, because they seem loving toward me when they see me.
Yeah.
And I was elected to the Tallahassee City Commission while I was a teacher at Florida High. And I had a group of teachers who called themselves my cabinet at Florida High, and we would meet over coffee before classes started in the morning. And some of them are still very close to me. And so I was elected the first black female city commissioner and served 2 terms as mayor. And that was a first in the history of Tallahassee.
And taking that, you were right, taking that with your background, with how you were raised and where you grew up, and just seeing what you were able to do I know you're an inspiration. Because that is,
Well, a lot of things people don't know about me. You know Anita Davis,
I do.
who was the first black woman to be president of the Tallahassee NAACP, and then the first black woman elected to the county commission. But what you may not be aware of is that there had never been a black person who served on the Leon County Commission since Reconstruction, before Anita decided to launch a campaign for single member districts and made me her political action chairperson. And Anita and I launched a campaign, made presentations to the county, trying to convince them of the fairness of going to single member districts so that there would be fair representation for all of the people in the county. They weren't listening. When we enlisted the help of the national NAACP, and they felt we might be moving toward a lawsuit against the county, they were willing to sit down and talk. And that was the evolution of the county commission you see today, with the 2 at-large seats and the 5 single-member district seats. And Dr. Henry Lewis, who was the dean of the School of Pharmacy at FAMU, was the first black elected to the Leon County Commission under that format. And Anita followed him as the first black woman. And then Bill Proctor, who has been there since.
Yeah.
So that has been a seat and representation that African Americans in this community have had for a while. And as you can see, the community has changed, because now there are 3 African American representatives on the county commission, 2 at large and 1 single member district. And so I'm kind of proud of my work with the NAACP in helping to bring
That's huge.
that about.
I mean, you've left your mark on Tallahassee and on Leon County, and just something like that I don't think, especially younger people, realize how big and how monumental that right there is. And I just think that that's something, maybe I should talk about it a little bit more too, is just how important that is for us and how important it is that we have that representation.
It is. It really is. And even though Southside and Frenchtown communities still don't get their due, depending on who is elected, whether they're black or white, it has helped to shine a light on what needs to be done in our community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so going into that, do you mind if I ask you a question kind of off the cuff a little bit? So going into that, what is something that you have identified in the city of Tallahassee that you want to kind of work towards fixing as far as that disparity goes for the South Side or for Frenchtown, or both?
Well, I have been a long time, because of my upbringing in poverty, I have been a long time advocate for low-income families and making sure everybody in our community gets an opportunity for high quality of life. And some of the things we've done is I was executive director of Capital Area Community Action Agency for 14 years. And for those who don't know what that organization does, it is the largest nonprofit serving and advocating for low-income people
I didn't even know it was the largest.
in an 8-county area. We have offices in 8 counties and Head Start centers in 3. And that organization receives direct funding from the federal government for Head Start, for weatherization assistance programs, for rental and utility assistance through LIHEAP and CSBG, and the temporary emergency food program. We were the major distributors of commodities, foods, in several of those counties. And while I was there, I worked in partnership with FAMU's extension program to help to create home gardens for some of our elderly
I love that.
folks and low-income families, even if they were in rental housing in their backyard. Because I remember my mom planting greens, tomatoes, peppers in our rental housing, and making fresh vegetables available to them, and along with the distribution of the commodities, foods. And the extension program also would come to our distribution sites every month, and they would demonstrate how to use those commodities to make healthy meals, and would present those and make meals and hand them out at those sites. So, and one of the other things we did, because there were so many families that would be repeat, coming back, needing help with their utilities to prevent shutoffs, or needing help with their rent to prevent evictions. And what I did was set up a social services section of the agency where when we put their information into the computer, if they were repeat clients, we would refer them to our self-sufficiency program and ask them to sign up for a family self-sufficiency agreement and plan.
Yeah.
And if they were willing to do that, we would guarantee them more help with their utilities and rent. If they were willing to identify goals that would help them get out of crisis.
I love this so much, because you're meeting the temporary need, and then you're identifying that there is a long-term need, and then you're saying, hey, you come in and you help me identify what needs to happen, and you help me identify. That's great.
So the caseworkers would sit with them and develop the plan with them. Some of them, it would be, I want to get my GED. Some of them would be, I want to take classes at TCC. Some of them would be, I just need a job. I need an opportunity for a job. So we had programs that stemmed from that. And we also, since we had a Head Start program, we were able to get their kids signed up for our free early care program in Head Start, so that they were free to look for work. They were free to take opportunities we were giving them. We recruited businesses, law firms, and other groups in town that would be willing to take some of our clients as interns for jobs in their area. We received a grant from the federal government that allowed us to do micro enterprise. And there were single fathers who were coming to us, and they were able to start their own little businesses. There was one janitorial business that was started, and we even helped them in understanding how to negotiate, how to budget. We would, when they graduated from the micro enterprise class that we put them in, we would provide them a basket with their letterhead and their envelopes and their business cards, and we honored them at a luncheon and sent them out. And one of them was able to negotiate a contract with FAMU to clean dormitories. Another started a mobile car detailing. And all of that was because we took the time to look far out and help them to look far out and envision something different than what was happening in their lives right then.
And if you're taking the time to invest in people and in individuals, because this isn't like, okay, we'll come here and then everybody's going to go out and do the same thing. It's so unique, right? It's unique to each individual family.
And another thing we did was people would come to us when their utilities were already out or the day they were going to be shut off. And I negotiated an agreement with the utility department for the city where we would be the guarantor on their utilities, so that they would not be shut off, that they were there, they were applied. If you will agree not to shut them off, we will promise you that as soon as we can process their application and process the check, you will be paid, so that their utilities won't need to be shut off and their children won't be in homes with no utilities.
Especially in this heat. There have been a few, as a paramedic, there's a few calls that I've been on where the heat is turned on and it gets hot. It gets very hot for families.
So when I was elected to the city commission, that was one of my priorities to look at, because peak utility bills at that time were very, very high in the hottest summers, and in the few days of really cold weather we get in Tallahassee, the utility bills would shoot way up. And so one of the things, because Dan Clayman was the city manager then, I discussed with him was how can we reduce the peak utility bills on people who are operating on a flat amount of money every month, and they don't have the luxury of their utility bill jumping way up without paying the rent or medicine or something else in order to keep the utilities on. And we talked about, like, now you have the budget utility bills where the city can look at what you paid in utilities the year before and average out, and you pay what the average bill is each month. So you can put that in your budget because it's the same amount that you would pay each month. But the big thing was, how do we hold down the peak? And I told them, we have the citizens are the main investors in the municipal utility.
Yeah, it's a big benefit.
They are our main investors. And instead of what we do in December each year is send them back a $25 check because we had a profit in the utility, or send them, depending on how much they paid in utilities for the year. Some people might get as little as $25. Some people might get $50. Some people might get $100, and some people might get much more if they were a big utility user. And I said, instead of doing that, why don't we create a utility reserve fund?
Okay.
That we can use that to hold down the cost when we have peak load on the utilities. And he was able to help me design the details of that, and the city commission approved it. And I don't know where that is today, but
I'd like to know. I'd like to find out.
I would too.
Yeah.
And but it made it easier for people to pay their utility bill. There aren't low-income people who are paying a $600 or $700 or $800 utility bill a month in these small rental houses, because we have the electric rate stabilization fund that I created back then when I was on the city commission.
So it sounds like you had a good relationship with the city manager back then.
We had, I always say that Dan Clayman was the best city manager the city of Tallahassee has ever had. He didn't pick and choose which city commissioners he felt he answered to. He answered as city manager, as he was supposed to all 5 city commissioners. And we were provided information. And the other thing was, staff really worked to help us solve problems.
Yeah.
And answer questions that citizens came to us with. They were not dismissive of the public, like I see at least 3, the majority of the city commission being today, where they sit high and they look down on average citizens and voters who come to express their concerns and ask for help and give ideas on what they think would work best for the public. And I talked to Debbie Lightsey, who was former city commissioner and former mayor, and Debbie and I agreed. We were so proud to serve this community during the period that we served. We all worked together, the 4 appointed officials, the city manager, the treasurer clerk, the city auditor, and the city attorney, all trying to solve Tallahassee's problems and doing the research to help us come up with real options for addressing the needs of the public. It wasn't like we do these backroom deals and only certain commissioners can know about it, and others get put out on the side. We were proud to serve in that institution.
But it sounds like it was just a very good people focus, right? Community focused, people focused. We're looking at getting jobs for people. We're looking at creating entrepreneurships. We're looking at making sure everybody can afford their utility bill. We're keeping it down for everybody. So it sounds very neighbor focused.
It was. It
Yeah.
really was. Dan Clayman passed last year, and we had kept in touch, he and Debbie and Jack McLean and I.
All the big names. All the big names.
I had kept in touch even though he had moved away, and we were so sad at his passing because we all really felt he was a wonderful city manager. And I know one of your questions has to do with what I'm proud of. And there's so many things I'm proud of that it's hard to pick one, but the Clayman Plaza is one of them.
Yeah.
And Dan Clayman had this vision for Tallahassee of a sense of place in downtown that was public-private, and wanted to make it happen. And I was teaching at Florida High, so when I had to do my mayoral duties, I had to take time off from my job at school and go to City Hall and take care of business. Well, there were 3 things that happened during the development of the Clayman Plaza. It was first trying to get the last property owner to sell, and that was the Florida Education Association. And I was a very active teacher union member. I had been on the first collective bargaining team for Leon County teachers. And I had, when I moved to Florida High, I became the grievance rep for United Faculties of Florida for our school. So Pat Tanillo, who was the president, knew me because I had been an active union member. And so Dan called me at school and said, "Doc, we need you." I was mayor at the time. Things have fallen apart with Pat Tanillo. He isn't willing to talk to staff about the sale of the property anymore. Can we enlist your help in trying to get a meeting with him? And he was very kind in giving me a meeting. And we talked about the pros and cons and how this was going to help our community. His was the only property on that wide expanse behind City Hall that was refusing to sell. And the city had pumped a lot of tax dollars into prep and planning for that. Would he be willing to help? And we would be willing to be fair in negotiating a price for the sale. And I would be involved in that and make sure he got a fair price for the property, for the FEA. And he agreed. And the sale was made, and we had the last property. Then we had another problem that staff was not able to solve. The city attorney and the city manager, and I had to step in again. It was the pollution on the site that had caused DEP and EPA to put a stop work order on the whole project because there had been a dry cleaning business on the site, and dry cleaning fluid had leached into the soil and created a polluted site. And I had to negotiate with DEP and Carol Browner, who was Clinton's EPA secretary at the time, to come up with a mitigation plan for taking care of the pollution so that they would allow us to move forward with the development of the site. And it took some time, but and Virginia Weatherall was the secretary of DEP at the time. And so it was three women negotiating this. And we were able to get an agreement, a mitigation agreement. And we were able to remove the stop work order and begin the plan for dealing with the pollution, and the development was able to go forward. The third issue on that site that I had to address as mayor was the private sector part of the public-private partnership for the site. Because pollution was found and the stop work order had been put on the site, no business wanted to be our private sector partner. And at the time, I was very active on the Florida League of Cities and with their committees and board. And Dan Clayman said, you know, the League of Cities is about to build a new headquarters, state headquarters down the street. They have plans to do that. We're part of their family. Now, do you think you can convince them to instead build down the street, to build on our site? I don't know, but I'm trying. And I asked to be put on the agenda. Went to the board meeting, made my pitch, talked about how we were part of the family, and at this time we needed our family to support us. And this was going to be a wonderful project when it was finished, but we needed our private sector partner. And I was there to ask them to be that private sector partner. The staff for the League of Cities was totally against it. Did not think it was a good idea, but the board voted to support us. And so that part was taken care of. So that tall building on the Clayman Plaza, where Harry's is an offshoot from, is the League of Cities building. And about 6 years ago, Mike Siddick, who took over as the League of Cities director, when his dad stepped down, Ray Siddick, saw me in the plaza one day, and he stopped me. He says, "Dot, I want to share something with you." He says, "You know how we were against this partnership. We thought it would not be good for the League of Cities." He says, "And I am so happy to tell you that this was the best thing that could have happened for us, because our vacancy rate for office space is almost nothing, and we have completely paid off the building, and we are really earning money for our corporation." And I was very pleased to hear that, because his sharing that with me told me something very important, that he respected what I had done all of those years before, when I convinced them to do that, and we had kept our part of the bargain and made it a good development. So the Clayman Plaza with the IMAX and Harry's and the League of Cities with all of those other shops, the restaurants and stuff, all of that came about because of the work.
Yeah, there's events that happen there. It is really a place that people can come together and meet up with each other and just have like a good community together. I've been to so many events that have actually happened there. You know, I remember just even growing up, I grew up in class, I remember that's where the events would happen.
And the fact that the park on the Clayman Plaza was named in my honor was a real honor for me, because I put a lot of work into making that happen.
three big things that happened that could have stopped it. You had to come in all 3 times.
And I'm proud to have my name fronting Duval Street with the Dot Inman-Johnson Park on the plaza, along with Dan Clayman Plaza, because we did work very closely together, mayor and city manager, on that project.
And it just goes to show like how important, you know, it is to have a good relationship with not just one of the commissioners, but all of them, being able to use these skills that every single commissioner brings in. Because I do believe that all the commissioners have the ability to bring in different skills and different, you know, benefits to the city commission, different perspectives too.
And people talk about the divisiveness on the city commission now. We disagreed on things back then, but it wasn't that kind of deep division you see now. We tried to, everybody, even though we disagreed, people were all working for the benefit of the public. They weren't working for their own self-interest. And that's what made it different and so we could find common ground.
And I think that that's again, that's one of the important things to have in a commission is having that common ground. And it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have different ideas of how to get to the end goal, as long as the end goal is the same. And I think that maybe that's the issue with the current commission is maybe there's different end goals, right? And I think that that's where having a strong leadership up there who can course correct it and say, the neighbors, the taxpayers, the public, that's our goal, is to serve them. And I think that that's, obviously what you did when you served on it before, and you had a great relationship with, it sounds like, everybody that you worked with.
And I think I bring a lot of qualities to leadership on the commission that might be needed right now. A real sense of purpose, a real understanding of how working together as a team. There needs to be more real team building, not just among city commissioners, but between the city and the county as well, because relationships have broken down so terribly between the city and the county as well.
So, from being on the outside looking at it, what would you, I guess, diagnose that issue as being between all the commissioners? What would you do to bring everybody back together? We can start with the interlocal agreement with the fire service people.
Well,
and I'm
first of all, the Ocala case is proof that the fire service fee is misplaced on the utility bill. That case ended up showing that it was a violation of the Constitution, the Florida Constitution, to put a fire service fee on a utility bill, a customer's utility bill. And in the case that was filed on the fire service fee, the city tried to get the case dismissed based on the fact that it was not a fire service fee, it was a fire service assessment. While at the same time, when you pick up your utility bill, it says very plainly fire service fee. So you can't change it after the fact. And any assessment can't go on a utility bill. It has to go on your tax bill. And so the county has already taken care of that because they realized that it was placed in the wrong place. And the city is so stubborn in just refusing to accept that and is sticking to its guns, even though it has made favorable provisions for certain parties in the community.
Yeah, when we saw the churches.
He removed in the beginning, it did not add the fire service fee to the utility bill of some of the big churches.
Yep.
They were never
charged for it.
Charged for it. And then churches that got upset about it when they found out and got an attorney to go and meet with the city, they were willing to back off of the fire service fee on, I think, the sanctuary.
Yeah, because I think originally it was supposed to exclude the sanctuary, and they would just take that square footage.
And it's all of the other.
Yeah. Because some of them have schools, some of them have cafes, some of them have, there's a bunch of other things that are going on this campuses. So just excluding that sanctuary would still mean that they, obviously you're still going to be getting fire protection for everything else too.
Yes, and even paid some of the churches back
Yeah, I heard about that.
money
Yeah.
that had been charged over a period of time. But they steadfastly refused to give those same considerations to poor families that were paid the fire service fee on their utility bill. And that kind of forced our hand on that. And the main reason, in addition to it being a regressive tax on the poor, that we were opposed to it, was that fire services, which are essential public safety services, should not be relegated to a fee on the utility bill in order for firefighters to get paid a fair wage and to get the needs met for their fire stations. All of the time I served up until 1999, when the city did the fire service fee ordinance, police and firefighters were always paid from the general revenue budget, because those are essential services for the public. And how they decided they would treat firefighters differently than they did police officers, when both of them put their lives at risk every single day to protect our lives and property, I could not understand. And I certainly couldn't understand when it was explained to them by firefighters who were leaving Tallahassee, going to work for surrounding smaller counties, that going to work for surrounding smaller counties that were paying higher salaries than the most urban county in the Big Bend area. They still would not listen.
And real quick, if we could just speak up, you'll adjust your mic. And is it both of us that? Okay. Okay, so continue. I'm sorry. I want to make sure everyone hears what you're saying about this.
Okay. But that was the driving force behind trying to do this. And it wasn't as though we had not tried to get the message across to the 3-vote majority on the city commission. They would not listen. And so people were left with no option to gain fairness for everybody, for the poor and for firefighters. And if I'm elected, I am going to be a voice for paying firefighters a fair salary and putting them back on the general revenue budget so that they aren't held hostage to a fire service fee that the city doesn't even collect from everybody.
I know. Yeah. Because I mean that's a heavy topic, and we've talked about it on the page too, just with the utility bill forgiveness, and then the fire service fee forgiveness, and so it does kind of leave it up to the burden gets shifted on to other, fee-paying citizens or tax-paying citizens when we're not collecting from everybody, and especially whenever they're, a bigger building that might have a larger fee or utility bill, then all shifts onto the rest of us.
Yeah, when I look at the national news with these explosions and everything, where firefighters have to go in and try to save the property, save people who are in there, and risk and sometimes lose their lives, it makes it very important.
And we're getting a lot more of those tall buildings, especially in College Town. You're seeing a lot more of those higher buildings go up. And so that takes a special training that all of these firefighters are going to have to go through in order to be able to approach those fires. And they have already gone through, but it takes that extra training, it takes extra equipment. We got to make sure that all of the trucks that are responding to that area and all the stations that are responding to that area have the trucks that can respond to those areas. So I think that, again, when we're not completely collecting the fee from everybody, we're kind of robbing ourselves of that service. And we're shifting it on to another revenue source, or we're trying to other people, right? Other taxpayers.
And I don't see there being a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We have to put priority on police and fire. Those have to be major priority areas in the budget.
Well, because it has to do with safety. And I mean, I worked in public safety, so obviously, I feel that safety comes first, and public education and safety comes first.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and the city is doing things now under the current city manager that should not be happening. We have an urban service area around the city that has been identified as the area where most of the urban services, the most dense housing, and all of those services should be taking place. The city has, over recent years, been allowing voluntary annexations by very large landowners in the county.
We saw a recent one, the most
recent one, acres and acres of land. And they did the same thing out Willani, where you go, once they have annexed the property in, they have agreed to run urban services out into those areas so that they are prepared when years in the future they decide to build subdivisions there to serve the population. Well, what they're doing is using our today tax dollars to do that instead of reinvesting those tax dollars inside the urban service area and replacing aging stormwater infrastructure and sewer infrastructure and roadway infrastructure.
And we're seeing what happens when it's not replaced. I mean, we had a neighbor who had sewage back up into their home because we're not keeping up with and maintaining that system.
And flooding in a lot of subdivisions inside the current city limits. I was called out to Jake Gaither 2 years ago where water was backed up into their neighborhood where people couldn't even get out of their homes. And from a lake that ran through, and the city would not even consider taking some action to mitigate the situation, to stop or at least reduce the flooding into the neighborhood. They could have done, I mean, if they couldn't dredge the lake, it would have been too expensive for budget consideration at that time. They could have taken less expensive measures to correct the problem. They could have done a retaining wall along the side of the lake where the water was overflowing into the neighborhood as a temporary mitigation on that until they could build into the capital budget money to start working on the bigger problem with the flooding and with stormwater upgrades that help to move the water quickly and not flood the neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's really important too, because when our city kind of falls short in that area, there's so many people who weren't able to get to work. They're not able to leave their house, they can't get to work. Well, then they can't pay their utility bill. So it's kind of this cycle. So this is why it's so important that if we are paying, our taxes and we are paying our fees, that it goes back towards the people who have been paying it, so that they can continue to pay it and they can continue to get to work and they can continue to feed their families.
And I got a little bit of a taste of that last Sunday when I was taking my husband for his Father's Day dinner. And we were planning to go to a restaurant in Woodville that he had selected. And when you leave the Capitol, there is a steep drop in the roadway going south. And the rain was coming down in puddles. And cars were starting to get stuck in the water on South Monroe.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And we saw it in time so that we could turn around and go a different route. But, I mean, it was like a little pond all along. And that tells you that something needs to be done for the stormwater infrastructure.
And it's across everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, in the areas, low-lying areas, where the water tends to stand.
Yeah.
And instead of spending the money on the Phipps property that they are about to vote to voluntarily annex all of those acres, and the money that was spent destroying the natural resources and habitat going out Malani and putting gas stations up against residential areas where people invested a lot of their money for their major asset, their home. Just to have a gas station backed up against it and to have extra traffic and noise coming into their neighborhood. Nobody wants that. And now, after the 2024 election, the majority immediately had the city manager put on the agenda a request by a developer to mow down all of the trees on the residential side of Thomasville Road going out toward Walmart. The Walmart side is already commercial. They have built all along there. But that area right at Velderdary Road, that little neighborhood leading into Velderdary, waged a hard fight.
I know, I watched it.
Trying to prevent them from taking away their residential preservation zoning and rezoning it to commercial so that that developer could clear cut on that side of the street too. And the three on the commission didn't listen, including the person
There was a lot.
I am running against.
There's a lot of neighbors who showed up for that one. Because I remember watching that one. I just remember just the sheer number of neighbors that showed up to talk about that.
And they had done their research. They had gone back to when the comprehensive plan was developed and how we had put in the plan sections that protected established neighborhoods with buffers, tree-lined buffers from the noise and from the development. And to see the way the current city commission is just raking away all of those protections for average citizens without even paying attention to their concerns is major.
And I think that that's one of the issues that whenever I'm watching it, that I guess bothers me the most is seeing people show up and they're involved in their government. They are paying attention. They do know what's going on. They've done their research and they're still not being heard, right? We hear neighbor after neighbor saying, I scheduled an appointment to talk to the city commission and I've only heard from a couple back, only a couple of them have agreed to meet. And I think that that's just really like the frustrating part that citizens are feeling. So is that something, do you have an open door policy for people? Are you, what?
I've always had an open door policy, whether it was for the people coming into Capital Area Community Action Agency to get help. I wasn't the kind of administrator that if they had a problem, they couldn't come and see me, or if I was going out the door and somebody was coming out and they were crying because they felt they were not heard or were not helped, that I would take them back into my office and see them. And there are citizens all over this community who know that and who know as a city commissioner, I heard them. And I continued the same practices.
For those of y'all just now joining, my name is Anna Marie with Florida Capital T, and this is Dot Inman-Johnson. You're running for seat
5.
Seat 5. So we've just kind of been catching up a little bit, talking about your history, and then we've been talking a little bit about the history of the city as well as some of the current events too. We've already talked about your most proud accomplishments, so I'm going to keep looking.
Well, that was, like I said, it was hard to pick, but there are a lot of them. The Greenwood Cemetery is one of them. And that comes to mind because of what the City Commission recently did with the Capital City Country Club, ignoring the fact that there was sacred ground where former slaves were buried on that property. And they just ignored it. And after letting the Capital City Country Club use that property for I think 69 years at $1 a year, sold it to them for peanuts.
It wasn't.
And then they turned around and they're selling it to a development company in South Florida for close to $1 billion. I think it's around $800,000 that they are selling it for to develop that site. And I just don't understand how two people who are African American can be among the three who just ignore what's happening in their community.
Well, that was something that had been known for 6 years prior to the sale of the Hamilton City Country Club, and nothing had been done. And so then, finally, when they're wanting to sell it, that's when they are going to memorialize it. But we still don't actually know how many graves are out there. And the results of the study, from what I read, said that there might even be more, but there needed to be more
There
testing.
probably are more, and I don't know if they had a cemetery expert to go out and inventory the site, and that's why I brought up the Greenwood Cemetery, because it had been an overgrown wooded area on Old Bainbridge Road that nobody identified as a cemetery until Anita Davis, Altonese Barnes, and Reverend Vaughn came to the city commission to make them aware that there was a cemetery there that had been created during segregation for black families in Tallahassee, and that family members, younger family members, had moved away. Nobody was there to care for it, and it had overgrown, and tree roots had grown into the graves. The graves had sunk into the ground, and you would not know it had ever been a cemetery. And they asked, since the city maintained certain cemeteries in town, if the city would take over Greenwood and make it one of its city-maintained cemeteries. The city staff urged the city commission to say no, because it was too costly to try to restore the cemetery. And they didn't have anything in the budget, the capital budget or the annual budget, to do that. And I asked to meet with the three city leaders who had come and asked for it, and ask if they would like to see if we could make a citywide project out of it and restore it, and then come back to the city and ask them if they would take it over and put the roadways back through it and everything. And that became our plan. I talked to Dan Clayman. He put it on the agenda. I was able to convince the city commission to approve that as the plan. We started in October one year, having work days on Saturdays, through, I think it was April or March of the next year. And we advertised it. The media got involved with what we were trying to do. I brought together some community leaders, including former Governor Leroy Collins, for a committee, a planning committee, the Historic Town Asset Preservation Board, cemetery expert Sharon Thompson, and lots of people who had expertise in this area. And we got help from the media in advertising our work days on weekends. And people would show up with their gardening tools and their big straw hats, and even schools like Sale and Florida High and Leon would give students community service credit for going out and volunteering on the project. And there were development companies that would volunteer to send their equipment, trucks and equipment out, and workers to help us. And it was either March or April of the next year, I was able to go back to the city commission and say, we have done our part. And I'm coming back to you and asking you if you will now do your part and put the roads back through and adopt it as one of the city maintained cemeteries. And we had created a situation where our actions made that happen. And I will never forget former Governor Leroy Collins coming out with his gardening equipment and his straw hat and out there working in the Greenwood Cemetery. And when you drive down Old Bainbridge Road now and you look at that cemetery, you would never know what it looked like before.
I drive by it daily, and
you would never know. And so it just really bothered me that these commissioners just ignored the public's outcry about that capital city country club. And I guess two other things I'm very proud of are the Smith-Williams Annex.
okay.
The Smith-Williams board came and wanted another building on that site because they were running out of space for the needs of that community, that bond community. And the city did not have it in the budget. And they did recognize that something needed to be done years and years out in the capital improvement budget, but they did not feel they had the money to move it up. And I was able to find the money through CDBG that we were receiving and reprioritizing certain things so that that Smith-Williams building could be made possible. And the staff was so happy that when I left City Hall, they took my City Hall portrait and put it in the Smith-Williams Center in recognition of my work and a many past program that I did because people in some of the older neighborhoods who had been paying taxes for decades and their neighborhoods were aging out without the attention they needed. They still had open ditches, real narrow streets, no sidewalk and gutter, and they were wanting to have their neighborhoods improved. And I went to Dan Clayman, and Dan was a real partner. I went to Dan Clayman and I asked him, couldn't we start putting money in our capital improvement budget so that we could start to address these problems in these older neighborhoods? And he says, well, Mayor, there's no program in the city that does neighborhood streets. We have a PASS program, a pedestrian street safety program for arterial roads, for major roadways, but we don't have such a program for neighborhood streets. And I said to him, because we don't have it, does that mean we can't have it? And he said, well, what are you thinking? I said, I think we should start putting aside some money so that we can address these problems in neighborhood streets. It's a street safety program. When you have these narrow streets with the ditches on both sides, schools where children are walking to school, and cars coming both ways, it's a safety issue, and we need to address it. He says, so what are you thinking? I said, a program that does what the PASS program does, but for neighborhood streets. And he said, you mean a mini PASS program? That's perfect. And so we researched it a little bit, took it to the commission. The commission approved it. And that mini PASS program is what has created street improvements in College Terrace, in Bond, in a lot of older neighborhoods in this community. And so there are lots of things that my fingerprints are on in the community. So, and they're near and dear to me. And so it's hard. It's like choosing between your children.
So we did get a question. They said you bring up a lot of good points. But what does that say? But several current commissioners ignore constituents. How can you ensure that our voices are heard when it comes to the board votes?
When it comes to
the board votes. So they're saying you bring up a lot of good points, but several current commissioners ignore the constituents. How can you ensure that our voices are heard when it comes to board votes?
Because I am going to be a strong voice for fairness, for equal opportunities for all of our community, because when we invest in every part of our community, it makes Tallahassee the best that it can be. And I have a lot of experience doing that. I don't just talk the game, I act on what I believe. And I do not do it in a divisive way. I try to convince and negotiate.
I mean, you have a history of that.
And create opportunities to hear other people's point of view and try to find a common ground that will allow us to move forward. And that's my approach.
I mean, that's a good approach. I feel like we can't ever put ourselves in someone else's shoes, but we can hear about it, and we can do what we can to understand their point of view. And I think that that's a step towards finding that middle ground between, hey, this is what I want, this is what you want. Is there somewhere in between that we can meet and get this accomplished for both of us?
Yes.
So, many of our younger voting age neighbors express a lack of representation in our community, and how do you plan to break down that barrier and ensure that their voices are heard on the City Commission?
I plan to break down the barrier because I am a firm believer that we serve at the pleasure of the public that put us there. We aren't there to serve our own interests. And we want to have an engaged public.
And a younger engaged public, because they're the ones who are going to take over.
An engaged public that includes all age groups and diversity, and look at all of the issues, because we need to bring along the young people who will step in and be the leaders once we step away.
I agree, absolutely, and because we need the older perspective to teach our younger ones, but we also need the younger ones wanting to be involved, and we need them to feel like they're being heard when they do show up.
Yes.
And when they do talk at these commission meetings, we want them to know, hey, you're not just a little kid talking. Like, you have a voice, and it's important that you're weighing in on this.
And they will not be talking to people who aren't paying attention, who don't care to listen, who already have their minds made up what they want to do, and it doesn't involve them. With me, I will always be available, I will always listen, and I will always try to act on their concerns.
And if you're just now joining Florida Capital T, my name is Anna Marie. I'm sitting down with Dot Inman-Johnson right now, and you're running for seat 5. All right. So our local businesses currently are feeling a lot of strain. Do you have any solutions to relieve that strain on those local businesses? And I know you talked a lot about entrepreneurship earlier. So this kind of dovetails into that.
I think we can do a lot to invigorate our center city instead of pushing development and businesses toward the county line. And the farther you develop outward, the more you drive enterprise outward, and soon you will have a dying city. The city can't just be alive when the legislature is in session or when the universities have their big games in town. We want an 18-hour center city, and you do that by having housing close in that people can walk to downtown, by having a variety of businesses that include the arts, galleries, that include museums. I'd like to see a miniature museum downtown, just like in Chicago. Lots, not just offices, but activities for people to go to after hours. I can remember when downtown had, even with the mall, had quaint boutique shops I mean, the kind of lady shops that you don't get in the mall.
That you go to Thomasville for.
That you go to Thomasville for now. They had quaint boutique shops, even some consignment shops. I love doing consignment shopping. And a variety of restaurants that people can go to. Parking policies that allow people to park in downtown, like in Thomasville and some other places. I brought some books that I wrote with me that I was going to share. And one of them is about lessons from, and one of them is lessons from America's best and worst cities that I researched. The cities that end up at the top of the most livable cities list and the most economically sound cities, and a chapter on capitals that Tallahassee can look at and compare what's happening in those successful capital cities with what's happening here to make sure we are doing what we need to do to keep our city vital and strong. And so,
And what we'll do is we can actually put the title in the comment section, and in that way, if anyone wants to look up any of these books and read them,
they're on Amazon, but people don't like to order from Amazon anymore. And this one, Poverty, Politics, and Race in America, was my first book after I retired from Capital Area. And I was so concerned that people were stereotyping poor people and having this blanket definition for who they were. And it was an unfair stereotype. And so I wanted to write about poverty and how politics and how race influences it. And that's what this book is about. And this one, Tallahassee's Black History First. When DeSantis started talking about eliminating our history, sanitizing or eliminating our history, I felt it was important that we tried to preserve some of our local history, and I wanted to chronicle the people who were the first in their field in Tallahassee who were Black. And that's what this book is about. And I brought also some of my artwork because I told you I was an art teacher.
Yep.
And I grabbed a couple of my prints.
Oh, I'm excited.
A couple of my prints that from my original artwork. This one. And this one is a drawing of my granddaughter, who is now 34, when she was a little girl. And this one is a drawing from what used to be called the Junior
I
Museum.
remember the Junior Museum. Yep, I recognized it as soon as I saw it. These are gorgeous. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from an art teacher now. So, and all of the students that you taught now do this, right?
Well, they were. I used to draw a lot on the chalkboard
Yeah.
when we were doing things. But one of the things I did in my art classroom was to try to expose the children to as much as possible. So we didn't just sit in the classroom and do art. I would do thematic lesson plans. Like we might do cartooning and caricatures. And I would invite the artist from the Tallahassee Democrat to come to the class and talk about how you exaggerate different parts of the person, the things that are most prominent in a caricature. And that's how he starts out with it. He would do some of the children, then the children would do some of each other. And cartooning, where we would do the flip chart animations and do a comic strip, pick their favorite comic strip and analyze it and talk about how it worked, and then make up their own cartoon character and do a comic strip about their cartoon character, and bring in folk artists from the community who would the white oak basket weaving from the folk artist who has worked in the Smithsonian, who lived over in the Monticello area, and she did the white oak basket weaving, and she would show them how, starting with the white oak, stripping it and soaking it and getting it ready, and then weaving the basket. Then we would do our weaving lesson from that. So it was tying in what they were learning in the art class with real artists. And I remember my director at Florida High, Dr. Vituino, he would, I think his wife, Bev Vituino, was a teacher at Leon. And they would take their kids to Paris. They had a place there, and they would go to Paris on most summers and spend some time there after school. And he remembers the first time after I was teaching his son Jimmy that they went to the Louvre in Paris, and Jimmy was lighting up and naming the artist as he was walking through. And Dr. Bertuno came back after the summer, and he said, I was so proud of Jimmy. He knew the works of the artists. And I asked him, how did he? He says, Mrs. Inman taught us. and so it was, I really enjoyed my work as a teacher, and I really related to my students. And because I'm a people person, now I grew up very shy. Nobody would know that looking at me now and what I've been involved in. But I grew up very shy, very introverted, to myself, drawing and writing poems and staying in the house, and my mom could hardly get me to go outside and play. But I really related to my students, and some of them didn't have the care, and so I would teach. I would be city commissioner and mayor, and once a month I would bake enough cupcakes in the evening for all of the children who had birthdays in that month. And they knew I cared about them.
Oh, that's so sweet. And it's I can tell that you can connect because, I mean, obviously, you know, when we were sitting here talking, there's like the connection, you know, and so there's definitely a connection to the community too, you know, and it's I think that's really important. All right. You've actually answered a lot of these questions. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about your relationship with the past city manager and with the past commission. How do you plan to advocate for the betterment of our neighbors, but also work with the current majority of the commission to ensure change happens? How will you approach that?
Well, I'm hoping I'll create a new majority on the commission, and it will be a majority that will listen and care about the concerns that citizens bring to us and work together to build a consensus on issues that matter to our community. We have a community with wonderful values. We don't want to be an Orlando. We don't want to be a Miami. We don't want to be a Jacksonville. We like the natural resources we have. We want to preserve some of what's left. We don't want them just raked over. We like our canopy roads, but we want to preserve our canopy roads and make them safe at the same time. And we want to restore the value that was in the comp plan, where we like and protect our existing neighborhoods and communities, and we try to make life better for all of our citizens. I like the quote, and I forget where I got it. A rising tide lifts all boats.
I've heard that.
And that means when we can lift the people who are doing the poorest in our community, we lift our community as a whole.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the more that people have a comfortable way of life, the more they're able to actually go out and spend in these local businesses. And then the more those local businesses can afford to hire more people because they are getting more.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, the condition of our local environment is growing, is a growing concern. We talked about this just now about development. Many of our waterways connect throughout Florida. What environmental issues have you identified, and do you have any solutions at the government level, the city level? What is Tallahassee doing well when it comes to the environment?
Well, one of the things the city agreed to do, I don't know how far they are going in terms of implementation, they adopted Rethink Energy's climate change energy plan. But I want to make sure it's not just put in a drawer and forgotten and shoved aside, and that we really start to look at where we should be at different periods if we are really implementing it. One of the things we need to do is reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. We have large fleets in city government. We have Star Metro. We need to look at electric vehicles. We need to look at more bike and pedestrian paths that are safe, that aren't in the street, that are safe for pedestrians and bikers, that are on major thoroughfares and not just the rails to trails down near Woodville.
Yeah.
Or around a stormwater facility that people can really use for transportation.
Not just leisure, but to actually get places.
And look at our bus routes and schedules and make sure they are planned in areas where the transportation need is. And it's planned on a cycle that's fast enough so people can really consider using it.
Yeah.
And also maintaining the dial-a-ride program and seeing how we can enhance that, especially since the city has now built the senior center way out on Willani Boulevard instead of central to the city.
Yeah, and that, you bring that up too. And we want things that are, reliable, they're on time, and then you're not waiting for hours, right? And I think sometimes with the dialer ride, there's sometimes like a long wait. Sometimes it's not as reliable. So I think something that can just make it a little bit more efficient would be helpful, because I think it's just having the resources for the program, making sure that all of our resources are diverted to the right places to make sure that we have these amenities.
Absolutely. And recently the city was cited several times for sewer spills, and I don't think they paid much attention to it.
No.
And DEP should find them. It's taxpayer money, but the way to get the taxpayers' attention is when the city isn't doing its job.
Yeah, and you think about like the sewage backing up and stormwater not going on, and all that kind of goes into the environment too, because we have it all backed up. We have like Lake Munson, and there's a lot of conversation about how some of that is coming, of course, upstream from Tallahassee down into the county and into that lake. So,
and most of the pollution problems happen on the south side, because nobody was going to build a sewer plant on the north side of town. Nobody was going to do an airport spray field on the north side of town. It's those kinds of things that are way past their time being looked at and corrected. And I can remember when a coal plant was being proposed here in Tallahassee. And I wish I had brought the flyer that Anita Davis, Tommy Mitchell, and Edwina Stevens, who's considered the mother of the South Side neighborhoods. And the South Side Post Office is named in her honor. We really got the South Side community up in arms to vote against that ballot initiative to put a coal plant in Tallahassee, and the plant failed. And I had a flyer that my husband came across when he was going through some papers that we distributed all through the neighborhood with the 4 of our pictures on it saying vote no on the coal plant, and on the back of it it said white people should vote no, because whenever industry is trying to bring a non-compatible industry to town, they always fall back on this is going to provide jobs for people. And that will usually get low-income communities to sign off on it. And we wanted to make sure that our community did not get fooled by this, because a coal plant in Tallahassee was the most horrible thing you could bring here as an industry. We want clean industry in Tallahassee.
Yeah, clean, good paying jobs, fair to the workers. I mean, you being a union person, I know how important having livable wages is for everybody.
Yes.
So, is there another question? Oh. So we have actually been going for an hour and a half, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. It flew by so quick. Is there anything else that you wanted to take a moment to discuss that we didn't get a chance to discuss, or that we didn't? Oh. So we actually have the right here. This is the we are voting no to the coal.
And on the back it says reasons why.
So if anyone wanted to take a look at that, is that on your website also, or
No.
no? Okay. So you can find her website, though. There should be a link if you wanted to check out her website. You can donate. You can sign up to volunteer. All of that through there for her campaign website.
And if you support the work I've been doing all of my adult life here in Tallahassee to support our community, I would appreciate anything you can do to help me win on August 18th.
It is coming up quick, too. That's only 2 months away. It's about 2 months away. Thank you so much, and thank you for sitting down with us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.